Good morning. This is our second class for this course, Transportation Management, where we'll look into transportation as a critical link in the economy. In our previous chapter, we have looked into transportation and how it is an integral part of supply chain network. In this, we are looking into more macro aspect, or we have taken a macro view of how this transportation is part of the economy of individuals and the country as a whole. Uh, it looks into, in the introduction, we see that uh, the focus is on holistic view on significant aspects and also on the impact of improved transport. Transportation, which is an essential part of our daily life, is vital to economic growth and development of a country. It has also a significant social, environmental, and political consequence. This chapter looks into the historic significance, the economic significance, environmental, social, and political significance. Now, as far as historic significance is concerned, in different parts of the world, the civilization has grown mm, close to uh, river transportation system. An example of that is the ancient Egypt, which had grown on the banks of the river Nile. This transportation do also have a social impact because it tries to uh, foster some unifying political and cultural ideas based on an well-knit transportation system. It helps in the growth of trade and economy. The canals, the rail and the road system of US. It has actually it's the reason behind the expansion and the growth in the 19th and the 20th century. Transportation is vital also for the national defense, the internet, the interstate system, which was built with a big objective to mm, move the troops from one part of the country to the other. Uh, in many countries and also in the history, the Roman civilization, they've understood that the military strength of a country depends on the type of transportation system they have. So it is developed keeping that into mind. Uh, and the better the transportation system, the the bigger area or the reach of the army would be more. So they're directly related to one another. These are some of the prominent dates as far as U.S. Transportation Department is concerned. Like when was the Amtrak established? When was the first pipeline set up? And so on. So you can look into some of those. Now, transportation is looked into uh, as a form of utility addition. Utility addition is another concept, economic concept. Goods which are produced at a particular location may not be demanded at that location, but it can have a demand at some distance location, and the transportation can create the utility by moving the goods from the point of production to the point of demand. So That's an utility addition. Transportation creates a bridge between the the production location and the consumption location, also between the supply and the demand. The economic significance of transportation, it has a big influence on the 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 cost of a commodity, because the the production cost plus the transportation cost is the cost of the commodity, uh, at which it is available at the final market. This is also called the landed cost. So if the transportation cost is high, the landed cost is high because it's added over the production cost. We'll also take a look at the time utility and quantity utility. Time utility is the demand fulfillment uh, at the right time. So if the demand is seasonal or if it fluctuates, so whenever the demand is high, if the goods are delivered at that particular location, then the utility is higher, and that's called the time utility. Quantity utility is the delivery of goods in the right quantity and in good condition. By good condition, we mean that it is not spoiled or it is not lost along the transit. There is no pilferage along the transit, and so on. So those are the quality utility. The quantity utility is basically the right quantity, whatever is demanded, that's being delivered. So time utility, quantity utility. In this slide we don't have, but we have also the quality utility, like the exact quality um, which is required, that's being delivered by the transportation system. This talks about the landed cost. Say at the point A, uh, there is the price of goods, there's a fixed cost, so the overall cost at the location A is AD. If it is demanded at the point B, um, at the point B, the consumers are ready to pay the price BE or OE. They're both same. In the old transportation system, where the transportation cost is high, um, the total, the final cost or the landed cost is OH. Now, OH being higher than BE, the consumers won't be ready to buy the product. But if the transportation system is improved, um, the final landed cost would be OJ, which is lower than the maximum price at the point B. Hence, the consumers would be ready to buy it. So we understand if the transportation system improves, goods can be sold at a market which are further away from the point of production. This is the Lardner's law. The Lardner's law says that if the transportation cost is uh, reduced by half, or if it's cut to half, so if it is say $100, it's reduced to $50. The the radius of influence, it doubles, and the area actually is a square of that. So it becomes, if it is half, uh, the area will increase 4 times. So over here, if the cost is reduced to half, the radius changes from 100 miles to 200 miles. Now the area is pi r squared, so it's pi 100 squared, so that's pi multiplied by 10,000. In the revised scenario, it is pi multiplied by 200 square, which is 40,000. So if you take the ratio of these two areas, it is 4 times. So the increase of area is 4 times if the cost is reduced by to 50% or half of the existing price. Then transportation is also a big help in specialization. It also helps in the comparative advantage. Two countries which produces two different goods, but country A has gotten comparative advantage over goods, say X, and the country B has a comparative advantage over a particular good, say Y. So this both started producing um, individually X and Y, then they trade among each other. But this is possible only if those two countries are linked by some transportation means. Otherwise, the specialization, and because of specialization, there's also the large scale production, which cause uh, the economies of scale, the production at lower cost. So that would not be possible if this transportation service was not available. Um, in different parts of the world, there are the east-west flows, especially in the northern hemisphere, the trade between industrialized nations. The north-south flows is between the industrialized nations and the developing economies in the southern hemisphere. The principal links between countries are basically the movement of goods between the metropolitan areas and ports. So those are the major movements. This slide talks about the GDP, the gross domestic product. The GDP, which is the summation of the consumption of goods, the gross investment, government spending plus export minus the import. Um, so that's the way the GDP is being measured. Transportation is 10.5% of the GDP in 2007. Uh, Now in 2014, or if you look at 2013, transportation would be probably lower than the 10.5%, because transportation as a percentage of the GDP has decreased. Now if you uh, take the different class of activities or goods which make up the GDP, the top would be housing, healthcare, and food. Uh, Next comes transportation, and it is followed by education. As far as household expenditure is concerned, transportation makes 18% of the total household expenditure. This is the table which talks about the GDP, different functions, and transport is at the at the fourth highest percentage level, followed by education and recreation. This is based on the 2007 GDP. This table shows the average household expenditure, and transportation is second highest percentage of household expenditure. It stands at 18%. Again, this is based on 2007 survey. The data collected by the Bureau of Transport Statistics, which is a part of US Department of Transportation. Environmental significance. Now, when we make a transportation project, um, oftentimes there is a requirement to get a sanction from EPA, Environment Protection Agency, because this transportation has a big impact on the environment because of the pollution, because of the consumption of natural resources. The different policy changes which are happening in different parts of the world, it's very rigid more in the Europe than here. Any transportation investment, any sort of operation, they have to be sanctioned by the proper competent authority who basically looks into the impact on the environment and also in the society, what type of societal cost that transportation is going to have, and based on that the approvals are given. As far as environment is concerned, sound is also a big factor, which is a big component of that environment. Any EPA sanctions look into the sound pollutions which are done by a transportation project. Then there is a concept called the green supply chain, which basically looks into the the environment impact along the whole supply chain process. So it's not only at the production or at the consumption or at the distribution, but the whole supply chain. Um, Business leaders are understanding that the environmental quality may not always be a zero sum game. Um, different There are different aspects which may not have that dollar value, but still they had to be taken into consideration when any particular um, transportation infrastructure project is being studied for its approval. Air quality and acid rain, because of the extreme pollution, different countries experience acid rain, um, which in turn affects the crops, forest, human health. Sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds, they are they are they are part of that acid rain. They basically get mixed up with the rain and it percolates down. Internal combustion engine is a huge source of pollution. There are existing regulations which basically deals with emissions from the motor vehicles, but probably there are more changes which would be happening in the future, which will be restricting um, emissions by vehicles. The greenhouse effect, the heat radiating from the earth is blocked by uh, blocked or being absorbed by gases in the atmosphere. So that basically creates or increases the temperature. Um, Many of these sources of gases are from the exhaust from transportation. So this has got a big detrimental effect on the environment. The ozone reduction, the the chlorofluorocarbons, which is used in refrigerators or which was used in refrigerators, are a big cause of the ozone depletion. The ozone depletion causes ultraviolet radiation to reach the Earth's surface, which is a big hazard for human health. Now, these are the different aspects which are taken into consideration when a transportation infrastructure is studied. The other aspects as far as maritime and water quality is concerned, the oil tanker spills, um, hazardous material spills, motor oil spills in water runoff. These has adverse effect on birds, um, the the mammals, the quality of water used for drinking, and so on. Noise pollution. Noise has also an detrimental effect on the health. Uh, the major source of noise pollution is the airplanes, the motor vehicles. There are different researches which are done, which are funded by the U.S. Department of Transportation and the FAA, the Federal Aviation, to see what are the ways of stopping this noise from uh, reaching the residential areas. In different parts of US they use the um, the noise barriers, the walls, concrete walls which are used to stop. They are sometimes effective. They probably cut around 60 to 70% of the noise from the highways reaching residential areas. The noise emission is governed by the Noise Control Act of 1972. Safety, the transportation related safety, there are a huge number of deaths which are caused every year because which are related with transportation, and most of these are on the highways. Mm, Percentage wise, uh, it is decreasing, but still there is a lot more to achieve. Federal administration does have a safety initiative. So there are different ways where federal government tries to understand the cause of the accident. What are the different ways that it can be decreased? What are the improvement of the infrastructure which can be done to decrease that, decrease the number of accidents happening? Social significance, famine and other disaster relief efforts. Different parts of the world doesn't have that much of good infrastructure, which causes help uh, to to reach at the final destination uh, quite late, and it can again uh, cause a huge problem, the human population living in those areas which are not connected. Um, so those are some of the social significance. So government has to sometimes take initiative to connect different parts of the country with proper highways so that different relief measures can reach those locations. There are other political significance of transportation. Common among them are the common carrier concept, the power of eminent domain. The power of the common carrier concept is the highway the carriers should carry goods from all shippers, so they cannot discriminate on that. The power of eminent domain talks about how government can take care of or take the land from individuals in order to make highways. Uh, so probably at some uh, they have to pay uh, some sort of a damage to that individual, but that may not be in the existing rate. Transportation facilitates commerce. Uh, Different states' political boundaries, they look into transportation as ways to promote trade and commerce in that particular region. We have talked before that transportation also helps or improves national defense. That's again a big uh, incentive to develop the transportation. Transportation system can be looked from three perspectives: users, providers, um, and government. Users are um, who creates the demand for transportation. Again, that demand can be for um, personal movement, it can be goods movement or freight movement. The suppliers of transportation are the carriers, the infrastructure providers, and the government who basically formulates policy how the operation should take place, how the infrastructure should be supplied, and so on. So, this is an overview of that transportation. These are the different trends of transportation: the transportation market, the transportation supply, operations and management, government policies, and regulations. Some of the trends are the deregulations of the 1970s and the 1980s. Uh, the railroad, which was regulated um, initially after the Surface Transport Board uh, Deregulation Act, they were deregulated and they could set their own price. Um, so these are some of the changes which had taken place. There also been change in the how the price structure can be set by different transportation modes. The demand for transportation has also changed. There are some specific demands like um, irregular piece of machinery or a huge size of a piece of goods which are to be moved. So those are some specific requirements. Key trends in supply, operation, and management of transportation services. How the service operation can be provided. And the key trend in government policies and regulations, how government policies changes and how that affects transportation. As we said that um, there was a deregulation of the railroad system. So because of the deregulation, railroad could set their own price. So there are other regulations like the gross vehicle weight. What can be the maximum gross vehicle weight of a vehicle? What can be the speed limit? So these, how many hours the drivers can drive in one go without taking rest. So these are different government policies which affect transportation. So our chapter ends there. This was the second chapter which talked about the transportation critical link in the economy. Thank you.